This is episode 21 of the Effective Executive Podcast, and I'm going to talk about something very different this week, and that is really the elephant in the room is all these things that are going on in the stock market and the shorts and things of that sort. And I think it's important, especially if we're going to be synthetic thinkers, we've got to be able to look at the broader systems in which we're playing a part. So I'm just going to give you and share my opinion, my read on things that are going on and where I think things are going in this podcast. So when I got out of college, the big thing was corporate raiders. People like Carl Icahn and Robert Bass and T. Boone Pickens and Asher Edelman, a few names that I remember from the 1980s. And when I was going through my MBA program, we heard words like LBO, a leveraged buyout, and white knights and poison pills. And, basically an LBO was the assets of the company maybe were undervalued, and people would leverage that into buying the company or get debt on those assets in order to buy the company. So it was basically using the assets of the company that was the target in order to do it. And I remember the first company I ever worked for was a company called Vonnegut Industrial Products, and it was had inventory or undervalued inventory in its system. They distributed to manufacturers, and I remember the owner bragging about how he had the original leveraged buyout before it was even coined that, because he saw that the inventory was could be used to help buy out the company with debt. Which creates a whole series of other problems, as you learn. And also, when I was in my MBA program, I remember studying Dole, and it was undervalued because the Hawaiian Beach property was undervalued, and that there were corporate raiders coming in trying to buy Dole in order to get to that undervalued asset and use it and leverage it. So that's kind of what I experienced initially, and it sounds good, but ultimately, as you watch things happen, it led to this short-term thinking, and I think a good way, or a good movie to watch in association with this is Wall Street, the original Wall Street with Bud Fox. That was Charlie Sheen and Gordon Gekko, Michael Douglas, and you had this nice cast, and I think actually Michael Douglas won an Academy Award. But regardless, it showed kind of the greed of that particular time period, which obviously then this translates over a period of time into ways that organizations think. So what happened from there is now we've moved to hedge funds and executives doing short-term thinking types of things. So in the case of hedge funds, recently we have the whole GameStop scenario, where a group of hedge funds were out shorting the stock, meaning that they were expecting the stock to go down. And a bunch of what they call Reddit raiders came out and band together and started buying up the stock. And then in a short, you're left with a number of different covers that you have to have. So that's the story in with hedge funds. But executives have now been in this game for a while too. And if you're going to be an effective executive, the way to go about making money and creating jobs and doing the right thing to make capitalism actually look good is to grow your company organically, through innovation and things of that sort. But we're stuck in this mode today where executives are so focused on, shortcuts to increase their own personal balance sheets, and it's a no wonder that millennials and others are looking at this saying, this system doesn't work. Let's try socialism, which we know is bad. But when you see the results of some of the things that are coming out of capitalism, I consider myself a capitalist. you have sympathy for and empathy for the younger generation looking at all this stuff going on and craziness and people getting laid off and all the things that are happening, and they're sitting there saying, I don't want to be a part of that. And we're promoting that in the U.S. economy, and I know other economies are doing the same thing by giving people free stuff in association with the things that are happening with COVID and all those, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But by but executives have looked for these shortcuts, and boosting the stock price has been such a focal point. It gets in the short-term thinking that we're not growing organically anymore, and we're losing whole industries with this thinking because we're competing against places like Japan and China that have, these guys are looking out decades as opposed to, am I going to make my quarterly dividend this month? So it's much different mindset that's going to be required moving forward, and using money for stock buybacks to artificially boost up stock price. It does not make you an effective executive. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And if that's the way you think, then I'm probably not for you. So the result of all this has been capitalism now has a bad name, and like I said, it's no wonder that it does. And I'm afraid for the U.S., even though we've started to become more of a socialist type of country. So this has grown into what are the Reddit raiders, and these are a lot of millennials that are probably taking their stimmy checks or their stimulus checks, I like to call them stimmy checks, to gamble. But why not? I'm sitting at home, I'm not producing anything. There aren't companies out there hiring, or they've been shut down by the government. So why not just use my stimmy check to go and gamble? And the stock market has become a casino. And long since, if we look back to corporate raiders and to hedge funds and the way that executives do things, we're promoting a capitalist economy that shows the worst of it and not the best of it. Today, the U.S. is $28 trillion in debt. I know we're not the only country, but the collapse of the dollar, since the U.S. dollar is used as the reserve for the purchase of almost everything in the world, you just can't have $28 trillion in debt. I don't buy into modern monetary theory where you go out and just print money. That to me is insane. And that there is going to be a backlash because it's going to reduce the U.S. dollar, and the dollar, as it collapses, and it's down around 90 right now, it's going to create hyperinflation. We get economic collapse. But I guess the good news is it's going to happen. In my mind, this is what we face moving forward. But there will be an opportunity as the dollar collapses, and we're going to go through some major pain, at least here in the U.S., and we'll need to rebuild. And we need to rebuild off of things like innovation that actually helps the economy grow, and create a better form of capitalism. And with the effective executive, what I'm trying to create is a better form of capitalism. So that was my rant for today. I'd be curious, is this the way you see the world? Leave a comment either on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell on YouTube to subscribe. On my podcast, there's opportunities to comment on what I've said today, and I'm also going to post this on YouTube if this hasn't, on LinkedIn if this hasn't gone too long. But give me your thoughts. Do you agree with me, or am I just completely off base?